Agency Formation Commission of June 4th, 2018. First order of business, call to order, roll call please.
Commissioner Hamburg. Scott, is my mic on? Okay, thank you. Commissioner McNerlin. Present. Commissioner Doble.
Here.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Here.
Commissioner McCowan.
Here.
Commissioner Brown.
Here.
Commissioner Orth.
Here.
Commissioner Ward.
Here, thank you. Public expression, is there anybody in the audience that'd like to discuss something with the commission that's not on the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on to other business, but we'll wait till we get the special representative here. So we'll move on to consent calendar. I would like to pull 4C just for some information, and then I think there was a problem with the minutes too. Teresa, you were here last meeting, right? Yeah, you're absent in the minutes. Does anybody else have anything that they want to?
I missed that.
So with the approval of the correction to the minutes showing that Commissioner McNerlin was present, I would move approval of consent calendar items 4A and 4B.
Second.
Thank you. We'll do a roll call, please.
Commissioner McNerlin.
Aye.
Commissioner Doble.
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Yes.
Commissioner McCowan.
Yes.
Commissioner Brown.
Yes.
Commissioner Orth.
Yes.
Commissioner Ward.
Yes, thank you. On the approval of the County of Mendocino Information Service Contract Renewal, in reading it, I found that the department, department name, or excuse me, the department head was signed by Janelle Rao, and Carmel actually signed as risk manager. Is that correct? Wouldn't the department head be Carmel and somebody else be risk manager? Also, the deputy CFO fiscal looks like it was somebody different as well.
I actually do believe those signatures are correct.
They're correct?
Yeah.
Right.
So,
And the deputy CEO fiscal, that looks like Dunnicliff.
Cliff, okay. So the actual department head for the CEO's office is Janelle?
She is
She's authorized to sign.
for Information Services Division.
I just wanted to make sure. And then the other issue was there was a talk of an Exhibit C of a bond, or I would assume some kind of probably employment bond. There wasn't anything listed, but is that something normal that we would need? Uma?
I'm not sure how it's been done in the past. I would have to look, but normally there is a certificate of insurance that is provided.
Yeah, right. But the contract actually said insurance and bonds. Anyway, that was the only comment I had on it. And the rates were a little higher, but I understand it is a 2-year agreement, so it looked reasonable.
Well, and it's just calculated based on the actual fully loaded cost to the employees, I believe.
But it does say that if the auditor's office changes those weighted averages, the pricing could go up during the 2-year term. That's all. So it's not really stipulated.
Right, so that would occur if there were a salary adjustment or
Right,
something.
right.
I did ask that question, and they said typically it's a 1 to 3% increase per year. But they would notify us.
Yeah, it was a 7.5% increase, so I figured 3.5, 3.25 for each year would be appropriate. Okay. Well, thank you for correcting me on that. I just didn't see that as
So with that, I would move approval of item 4C.
second.
Second.
Thank you. This is a contract. I think we'll do a roll call vote again, please.
Grab that one. Commissioner McNerlin.
Aye.
Commissioner Doble.
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Yes.
Commissioner McCowan.
Yes.
Commissioner Brown.
Yes.
Commissioner Orth.
Yes.
Commissioner Ward.
Yes, thank you. We'll move on to 5A, public hearing to consider adoption of resolution 2017-18-12 approving the Redwood Coast Fire Protection Service Municipal Service Review and Sphere of Influence Update. So this is a public hearing. Do we have proof of publication and all, Uma? Okay. So will you give us a little summary of this before we open up the public comment?
Sure. We held the workshop at our last meeting on May 7th, and we had some input from the commission. Those are itemized in your staff report starting on page 27 of the agenda packet. We were able to clarify one remaining item, which was item 10. You'll note that in your staff report that we had said it couldn't be addressed at this time. That was as of the writing of the staff report. We have since gotten some clarity on the financial table. AR does stand for accounts receivable. I believe that was a question from one of the commissioners. Also, the taxes and intergovernmental revenue is all special tax, and that is the district's primary source of funding that supports the district activities. Other revenue is has to do with the Irish Beach Water District area that was annexed into the Redwood Coast Fire Protection District, so they share a portion of the property taxes for those areas. So those were the two outstanding questions from the financial table, and the rest of the comments have been addressed in the document provided to you. There is a proposed sphere amendment. At the time of the workshop, we had identified a small area of a subdivision at the south end of the district that was not included in either the Redwood Coast or the South Coast Fire Protection District boundaries. Consists of about 16 parcels that are located on the west side of Highway 1, and staff is recommending that be included in the Redwood Coast Fire Protection District sphere at this time. And those are the only changes made to the document. And if you have any questions, Ms. Gawley from the board is here in the audience, and then staff can answer questions as well.
Before we go to public comment, is there any comments from the commission? Tony?
Just one. We know how many volunteers are currently in the district. One number in future, and I'm sorry I didn't catch this earlier, is what is the maximum number of volunteers each department can support? Because generally they have equipment for a certain number of volunteers. So when they say they're having trouble getting volunteers, it would be nice to know in future the maximum number that they can actually support within the department. And that gives us a feel for whether they're understaffed or have a waiting list. And there are many departments with waiting lists as well.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to ask, with regard to the two changes that we made relative to the Manchester Band of Pomo Indians of the Manchester Rancheria, for those two changes that we had, did we verify those with the tribe?
I don't believe they were verified by the tribe. I think it was an online verification.
So just to make sure we're doing that right, I might suggest that we go ahead and approve this, but subject to staff verifying with the tribe that those two, it's on page 3.1, section 3.1.1.2, and page 2-2, section 2.1.2. Simply verify that we're stating that correctly from the tribe's perspective.
Yeah, we discussed that the last time too. So can you verify that for us next time?
Yes.
Well, I mean, we would go ahead and
Approve
adopt
it.
subject to staff's verification.
Gary, you had some?
Well, it's basically the same thing I found online.
Well, you checked it too?
Huh?
You checked it as well?
Because I was curious.
But websites aren't always correct.
Okay. We'll have our executive officer check that and confirm it. Anything else you had, John?
No. And, well, I wonder if we did discuss with the district the slight expansion of the SOI, which does make perfect sense, and they're serving the area anyway, so.
We did. We discussed it with the district and also with the South Coast District to see which one had a closer response time to that area, and it is about the same. This is an area that is served. There's another small area that is not within a district at this time that's across the road that is served by South Coast, and I think that was identified in the sphere update for the South Coast District for inclusion in, or just to look at the next sphere update.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Well,
Go ahead.
when we talk about verification, did we check on the fire hydrants and who has that ownership?
Oh, in City of Point Arena. Or
We
the
did, and it
Waterworks.
is, they are owned by the city of Point Arena, so the district has limited ability to upgrade those on their own.
Okay, I just had a couple, again, I think like Tony, I might have missed it the last time too, but the audit for 16, 17, because they look like they're annual audits from Paling and Paling. I just wondered why we may not have gotten the updated 17. In addition to that, it states in here on page 48 of 127 that the outstanding debt the district has is $66,000. But you look at the balance sheet for 16, it might be a difference in years, but the balance sheet shows a much higher debt. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. It's, I think, real important we get these financial information in the future up to the most current if we can. Because the balance sheet shows 97,000 notes payable plus the current portion, but the written part says it only has 66,000. So that was my only point.
Okay.
All right. No more questions. We'll open up the public comment at 9:16. Anyone wish to approach the commission and talk about it? Ms. Gawley, do you have any comments? None? No, not at this time. Okay. Then we'll close the public comment period at 9:16 and bring it back to the commission. If everybody's good with us, have a motion.
Did you close the public here?
Not yet.
Because we can't do a motion.
Oh.
Or can
Okay. Yeah, I was trying to read my script again, but
Okay.
I'll close the public hearing at 9:16. Okay, Carrie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move the recommended action. One, to find the Redwood Coast Fire Protection District Municipal Service Review and Sphere of Influence update is exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act pursuant to Title 14, California Code of Regulations 15306 and 15061B3, and approve the notice of exemption for filing. And two, adopt LAFCO Resolution 171812, approving the Redwood Coast Fire Protection District Municipal Service Review and Sphere of Influence update, and amend the existing sphere of influence to add Area A containing 16 parcels to the district SOI boundary.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any comments? Anyone from the public like to make a comment? Okay. So we'll do a roll call, please.
And presumably that does include the verification we mentioned earlier,
Yes.
just to be sure.
Yes.
Commissioner McNorlin?
Aye.
Commissioner Doble?
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez?
Yes.
Commissioner McCowan?
Yes.
Commissioner Brown?
Yes.
Commissioner Orth?
Yes.
Commissioner Ward?
Yes, thank you. So just for, my cheat sheet says here, the chair will entertain a motion, and if the motion fails, then the public hearing is closed.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I was trying.
I'm trying to get this down. Okay, we'll move on to item 6, although there's nothing to report for workshop items. Move on to 7A, Commissioner Terms of Office, Special District Election, and Public Member Recruitment. Numa, you want to take this one on? Give us a little update?
Sure. This is an informational item, just to remind the commission that we have a number of commissioner terms ending at the end of this year. We have a county member, a city member, special district member, and alternate, and then a public member. So, this is the table that's on page 73 of your agenda packet. It has kind of a timeline for when we'll start the process. For the county and city members, it will be a reminder to the City Select Committee and the county Board of Supervisors that they will need to make new appointments. The special district will be a mailed ballot election, as we have done previously. Commissioner Bazzani will, her term, she's finishing out Commissioner Silver's turn, so she will be also up for, that position will be up for election at the end of the year. So we'll start that, and the alternate member in June, probably towards the end of June. The public member, Commissioner Ward's term is up at the end of the year, so that will be a process that we start in mid-September.
Yeah, Carrie?
Thank you. And under, it says the process and timeline for filling the anticipated vacancies follows. Under county member, there are not appointments in December. It's the first meeting in January.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And done by the chair. So you could have all 3 members turning over.
Okay.
And there's no need to check with county staff because that's just automatically occurs every January.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Thank you. We'll, the only one we probably need to get a jump on is the City Select Committee, because they tend to be a little hard to get together, but other than that, it looks like we're on schedule. Thanks. Okay, we'll move on to 7B, Proposed Electronic Email and Device Policy. Our Policy and Procedure Committee was quite busy with your information today, so we'll move on to 7B. Can you give us a little update on that?
Sure. This one was reviewed by the Commission at the May 7th meeting, and there were a couple of changes with direction to staff to check those with the legal counsel. So I have done that, and he did okay them. And this version incorporates those changes. It was changes to number 4 and number 5, the use of electronic devices for personal communication. And then also we removed a sentence out of item 5 for clarity. There was also a question about cloud storage and whether that was subject to the Public Records Act. And legal counsel's response was that if wherever public data is stored, then it would be subject. So it doesn't matter where it's located. So the resolution in your packet has the updated version of the policy.
Okay, any comments on this? John?
On paragraph 2 of the resolution, I would suggest a slight wording change, which I think would add a little clarity. It's the second sentence. Should commissioners and staff choose to use personal electronic devices for LAFCO-related business, and then I would move that next clause down and say they are assuming the risk that such communications may be public records and their device may be subject to search for public records. So it's all the same language, but it's just dropping one clause down so it's very clear what they and their refers to.
Okay.
And then you are deleting and they are, or not the and, but they are assuming the risk?
No, I'm not.
No,
I'm
moved it
just
up
simply
forward.
taking the phrase such communications may be public records and I'm putting it right after they are assuming the risk that.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll move Resolution 2017-1810, approving the electronic email and devices policy with that one change.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, there's a second. Any comment?
Good job.
All right, we'll do, all those in favor say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Seeing none, so approved. Okay, we'll move on to 7C, proposed definition of terms for policy and procedure manuals. Why were they originally removed? Do you remember? Or
I'm not sure on the history of when they were removed. It was just during the last update. Plan West did them. They dropped out of the policies and procedures manual. So this is an effort to bring them back in. And
update them.
Today what we're asking is that you approve or consider and approve the draft terms that are in here, and no adoption today. We would like to take them back to the Policies and Procedures Committee, put them into the manual, and bring an updated manual back to the Commission for adoption with the draft terms in there.
And you're expecting that in August?
Probably in August, since we have a number of policies on the agenda today. Then I left a month wiggle room in case there were any changes to those policies that would be brought back next time.
Okay, does anybody see any issues with the terms and definitions? Because this will go back to staff and we'll have another bite at it in August, possibly. Seeing none? We'll see it in August.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we'll move on to 7D, proposed Inter-LAFCo coordination policy.
Thank you. This is a policy that came out of the discussion last month regarding the Sonoma-LAFCO request for support on legislation for the Coast Life Support District. So I worked with Sonoma-LAFCO and Humboldt-LAFCO to come up with this Inter-LAFCO coordination draft policies. It has been reviewed by both LAFCOs, Humboldt and Sonoma, and they had no comments on them. Mendocino County shares at least 2 districts with neighboring counties. We have Southern Humboldt Community Healthcare District, extends down into Mendocino County to south of Piercy. And then again, the Sonoma County's Coast Life Support District extends up to service in the Irish Beach area. So this lays out the potential transfers of jurisdiction, should those be requested in the future, and also identifies steps for processing applications, whether Mendocino LAFCO is the principal LAFCO or not. We are not the principal LAFCO for either of those shared districts. So this draft policy starts on page 87 of your agenda packet, and I welcome any comments.
Any comments? So with regard to the Sonoma one, they're going all the way up to Irish Beach, I believe. So if they want to have a change of any SOI or MSRing, we just have comment is all.
Correct. We would comment on their application. So they also have a policy for coordination with their adjacent LAFCOs, which would trigger that comment. They would route it to us for comment. We have coordinated well with the both Sonoma and Humboldt in the past.
Right.
This just kind of puts it down into policy.
But ultimately, they have the decision making for
Correct.
any changes like that.
Correct.
So they can go on into Fort Bragg if they want. Okay, any other comments? Do you want a motion to approve this one?
Yes, there is a resolution in your staff report. And then there is language under staff recommendations on page 86 of your staff report.
I'll move the recommended action.
I'll second.
Okay. Any other comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Well, there's a
None?
resolution in here. Is that?
Oh, there's a resolution, need roll
There
call?
is a resolution, yes.
Okay,
Yes.
sorry, we'll do a roll call, please.
To confirm, the motion, Commissioner McCowan, was staff recommendations A, B, or A, to adopt the resolution
The
27-7
entire recommended motion. That's the motion.
of A, yeah, adopt resolution. Commissioner Orth,
Yes.
Commissioner Brown,
Yes.
Commissioner McCowan,
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Yes.
Commissioner Doble.
Yes.
Commissioner McNerlin.
Aye.
Commissioner Ward.
Yes. Thank you. We'll move on to item 7E, proposed area of interest policy.
Thank you. This is a concept that is a policy tool that is utilized by at least 7 other LAFCOs throughout the state, and is being brought forward for discussion today. It's not being brought forward for approval. The Policies and Procedures Committee did discuss this at their last meeting. It's a policy tool that's used to recognize situations involving challenging boundary considerations that can occur. It's typically used between cities and counties to identify areas that are outside the sphere of influence, but may impact that city or district boundary. We do actually have a definition of this area of interest in the that was in the previous definition of terms and was included in the draft definition of terms today. This is an area, this may be beneficial to use as we look at spheres in the future. So it's being brought forward for discussion. I have initiated some outreach with the cities and the county CEO's office and planning to introduce the concept, to look at potential uses for the policy and provide an opportunity for dialogue and feedback, which is why we're not asking for the commission to consider it today. So the policy is on page 92 of your agenda packet, and would welcome some discussion on this item.
Okay, I remember you sending me a memorandum letter to the cities and the county. Did you get any response back?
I did hear back from the city of Point Arena. Have not heard back from the other cities or the county.
Okay. Any comment, John?
Well, I think this might be addressing a problem that doesn't exist. I don't think any of the local jurisdictions in the county have a problem making their opinions and concerns known if they think anything another jurisdiction is doing will have an impact on them. I don't think the example cited under A 1.1A really holds water, so I just don't see that there's a need for this, personally.
So what's the downside if we just set it up as a policy, though, even though we may not use it?
I'm willing to hear the discussion.
Okay, Carrie?
And I think I'm siding with our chair. You brought up a good point, Commissioner McCowan, but it's better to have something in place. You may not have had a problem in the past, but it's better to have something in place potentially for a problem in the future. And I think the policy is a good example. When you hear other counties, when you go to the LAFCO conference, which I have attended in the past, and they talk about, different problems that have occurred in their counties. I just think it's a good approach to have something in place prior to a problem.
Tony?
Yes, the committee discussed this, and there were 2 areas just in the District 3 that were mentioned. One is the City of Willett's concern about the areas around in the unincorporated area where they have no interest in annexing, but are the 2 interchanges of the new bypass. And their concerns about any development occurring around those interchanges. And in Brook Trails in a district, our interest area would be the Sherwood Road corridor, both north and south beyond our SOI. So there are, I think the terminology area of interest is a good terminology because it's not something, it's basically saying to other agencies, we're interested if any projects are moving forward, we'd like to comment. It's kind of like a red flag, just saying, talk to us if you're considering moving forward or there are applications moving forward in those areas. And I think that was our discussion, to recognize that this could be a good policy for Mendocino.
Okay.
LAFCO.
Teresa?
I agree with Commissioner Orth
I see it in the using it in the future as a useful tool, and I don't see a downside into adopting it at this point. I recognize that it's just a trigger. It's just a trigger and say, hey, this is happening in this area of interest, and I see that as a good thing, and I don't see any downside to discussing this today and adopting it in the future.
Dan, you had a comment?
Well, yeah, I think some of this discussion here mirrors the discussion we had at the committee level, and I think because there was some hesitation, the kind of hesitation that Commissioner McCowan referred to, we did decide that this should be discussed or at least introduced to planning directors around the county. So I think this preliminary discussion is good, but I think as we get more information from those planning directors, we might decide, yes, let's go ahead, or no, this seems redundant, or it seems, an unnecessary, expansion of the SOI concept. So I'm not really sure which way I feel about it, but I would like to get more input.
Okay, good. So, Uma, when do you expect more comments from this? Well, as Dan just said, from the planning departments and the city managers and county CEO.
I can follow up with folks probably next week. That will have given them a few weeks to look at it. I'll follow up with them and then can hopefully move it forward. I think it could be beneficial as we look at the Willett Sphere update, which will be happening in the next couple of months. This is really, it's intended to be identification of areas that are a trigger for increased collaboration or coordination in that area. And there's not a lot of teeth in it as far as LAFCO, can say yes or no to things. It's really an area that LAFCO recognizes. The city can point to that, or the county can point to that, or special district, and say, this is an area that was evaluated, looked at during our Sphere update, one that we have interest in coordinating, increasing that coordination levels with. And then, it also provides an opportunity for them to maybe come up with an agreement between the two entities regarding applications or potential development in those areas.
Did you have any discussions with the other counties that implemented this and then had any specific reasons why they did it?
It seems to be a concept that is growing in popularity. Napa-LAFCO just adopted one last year. Solano-LAFCO the year before that. It's being used in Nevada-LAFCO, Ventura, and Butte-LAFCO. It does help increase coordination in those areas. I've also talked to cities that are on the other side of that. Some feel that there's not enough teeth to it, and then there's others that feel that it doesn't go far enough. But this would be used for areas that, the commission has to make findings about a sphere. Like, you're not supposed to include huge areas of agricultural lands. For example, with Willits, there are agricultural lands between them and the interchange areas. They're still concerned about those areas and would like to coordinate with the county on things that happen in those areas. But it may not make sense to include those areas in their sphere. So this would be a tool for that purpose.
Do you think this is something that CALAFCO will probably talk about in October at the annual meeting?
I'm not sure. I could check with the planning committee and see if it's on their list.
That might be something we could, if some of the commissioners go, we could give more information on how it works in the other counties as well.
Yeah, well, that's a good idea. We could, they also did discuss it. It wasn't the topic, but it became into the discussion for one of the presentations at the last conference that had to do with the city of Nevada City. The LAFCO was reviewing their sphere, which hadn't been reviewed in a long time, and was shrinking it based on their review factors. And the city had a lot of concern about development happening within that area, and were using their sphere, or in their mind using their sphere as a buffer for development around them. The area of interest did come into play, And that was the one that the city felt there wasn't enough teeth, and LAFCO felt that it wasn't understood well enough. The concept wasn't understood. So that's some feedback from that county.
Carrie?
Yeah, and I believe spheres of influence have rules. So, for instance, also, any entity that declares a sphere of influence and it's larger, you know, goes way out, it's illegal. You have to have it within a certain section. So that's why you mentioned the agricultural lands between the city's city limits, the sphere, and going out to the two interchanges. So yeah, it gets, and so a policy like this helps coordinate the discussion and what is actually happening and what the impacts may be when development occurs.
Well, it sounds like, kind of like Dan's idea, maybe we get more input from the planners and the city and county administration, bring this back and get some feedback from them. Tony?
I have to speak for Carol real quick because we had a discussion about how it would be implemented, and Carol spoke for having LAFCO be an implementer of a policy of notifying and checking plans and all that, and this is why it's going back to planning directors, because I think Dan and I felt that that wasn't so, and that LAFCO isn't designed to be reviewing all these studies. It is up to the planners to engage their areas of interest.
Okay.
Good
John?
point.
Well, and someone needs to propose the area of interest, and I don't think it ought to be LAFCO. If there's a local agency out there, then, and you've cited a couple of examples, then they could, you know, I would think we'd have to have an application process and go through some sort of process to adopt these areas. So I think there's a few details that need to be worked out here.
And both Brook Trails and the city of Willits are going through updates right now, so.
The area of interest is something that's typically identified during a sphere update. So it's not something that, again, you know, we are not a land use entity. We are not someone that approves development plans. So this is just, it's an area that is identified for increased coordination. It has no land use teeth to it. And again, it's something that's typically identified with the city or a district during the sphere update. You know, they would say, we have these areas that we would like to have increased coordination with, and so then that would come to the commission on the sphere map for consideration during the sphere update. So it could be identified by LAFCO staff during a sphere update or by the entity, the agency that we are reviewing.
Well, that makes sense. So I think the policy would be they would be identified through SOI updates, or if a jurisdiction wanted one adopted in between updates, they would have to pay for the process to amend the SOI.
Correct.
And update it.
Correct.
Yeah.
And to touch a little bit on what Commissioner Orth said, also, this is not something that would be enforced by LAFCO. This was noted on the sphere map, and it would be really up to the agency to, I'll use the example of a city and county. The city could say, this has been identified on the map. If a proposal from the county, in the county, was submitted, it would be up to the city to kind of use that and say, you know, this has been identified. We are asking for increased coordination in this area.
Although point B says that when LAFCO receives notice of a proposal relating to an area of interest, LAFCO will notify the interested agency. So we would have to be tracking that, presumably.
That is if there was an application that would come directly to LAFCO, yes, for an annexation.
Otherwise, it'll be up to the interested agency to monitor.
Maybe we ought to put those
That's
words
right.
in.
Yeah, that's important.
Add those words. of what she just said.
Jerry, you have a comment?
I just wanted to say I like the idea. I think that we all talk about wanting to share, and that and all the folks I think that are at these respective agencies all are working together now, but sometimes things get a little disconnected, and having another layer in there that just says, hey, like Carrie pointed out, maybe legally Willits doesn't have a right to that area, but we would like to at least have somebody send us, and I'm using that as an example right now.
We'll be able to comment on it.
Yeah, at least so that, hey, look, our area of influence is here, our jurisdiction's here, but heck, you're putting a toxic waste dump right just beyond that. We don't like that idea, you know.
Well, I think the policy is a good one, but I think we probably need to wait and get some more input back and bring this up again at a future commission meeting. Maybe we could do it at the same time we do our approval of the policy and procedure manual. John?
Also, you know, it looks like we have only done outreach to the cities, but there's other jurisdictions obviously could be interested.
Special districts.
Particularly the community service districts would be the most likely, I would think. But so maybe we ought to extend the outreach a bit.
Is that okay to do that?
Is that beyond the public hearing notice for the policy? So you'd like some increased coordination similar to the memo that was sent out to the cities and county? Am I understanding that correctly?
This is the memo that went out. It just went to the
Well,
city and the county. You're suggesting it go to at least the CS.
At least to community service districts, I would think.
CSDs, yeah. Okay.
I don't think we need to notify the cemetery districts.
Well, and there's a way to shorten that list is, I believe, planning is now a power special districts can adopt, so there's only a few of those districts out there in our county that have so adopted planning
point.
power.
Good point. So we'll reach out to them, get more input, bring it back to another meeting, and I think the consensus I'm feeling is that the policy may be a good one to adopt, but we need more information.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to item 7F, proposed legal counsel contract amendment. I'd like to begin, based on the discussion last meeting, I did compose a letter to our counsel requesting information, and I didn't get any response, but we didn't get a letter back. We just got an email back suggesting an amendment to the contract, correct?
Correct. They sent this out to all of their LAFCOs that they do flat rate services for. So this is an amendment that they are asking all of those LAFCOs to adopt or consider.
So we basically called him on some of the things, and he came back and said, "Oops, sorry, I need to change our agreement."
So included in your packet, the first attachment, which starts on page 94 of your agenda packet, is the current contract, and then there's the proposed contract amendment is on page 97.
John?
Well, I feel strongly that he's simply been padding his bill in an effort to show, look how much I'm doing for you. So he's adding in all these extraneous things that it's his responsibility to maintain his qualifications. I'm surprised he's not adding in a proportionate share of the annual state bar registration fee. He's came to us, or we found him based on his representations. He's a LAFCO expert. So he's going to be going to the LAFCO conferences and so forth, whether he has a contract with us or not, and I really think it's his responsibility to stay up on all of that. And when he starts passing on the travel and registration as an additional cost, I just think it's overreaching. And we called it on him, and he said, "Oh, let me revise my contract."
So what do you have as an alternative?
Well, we pay him for his travel or registration when it's something that we've requested. For instance, if he is coming here to do a training at our request, perfectly reasonable, we're going to pay his travel and his lodging and whatever associated expenses. If he's going to the CALAFCO conference or some other state LAFCO function, that's his responsibility. And it shouldn't be an extra charge to us. And frankly, I think, his contract is predicated on 3 hours per month, but if it's under, we simply absorb that. If it's over, he doesn't bill for it. But I'm pretty sure we're consistently under the theoretically allotted 3 hours. I think we rather seldom hit that. And so then this charging us for his conference travel and registration is just dinging us, in my opinion. And I'd be prepared to say, if that's not acceptable to you, I think we could find other counsel.
Carrie?
Yeah, and what struck me the first time around when we had this discussion at the last meeting was the fact there was no approval process, where our staff must come before LAFCO, and I'm assuming other staff of LAFCO's that he legally represents. We had no say. And to me, it's public funds that's paying the bill. So I thought it was very appropriate to have a process. So I also feel, we do have a problem here, and I don't know about the other LAFCOs that he represents, but we did pay a portion, but we didn't say, oh yes, you can go be a speaker at the conference, or oh no, you can't be a speaker because we can't afford these costs this year. We had no choice.
And I don't think it was understood when we engaged his services that we would be paying for those types of things.
And it was never brought up that I remember. But again, go back to public trust and public funds. And how do you justify if you're just charged and you didn't have a process for those charges? I mean, it goes back to the public trust and overseeing public funds.
Kevin?
Yes, thank you. It wasn't my understanding that this would be for travel and lodging and conference attendance. I thought it was more if there was something that came along through the legislation of the state that needed some review that benefited all of us, and he would offer an opinion, or he'd give us all the LAFCOs the same advice, that would be appropriate. But it doesn't seem like travel and lodging to attend these conferences is, certainly by my understanding, something that we agreed to, but I could be wrong. But it appears to me that he's now revising his contract to include that. Am I correct that it's not included prior?
It is not specified in the current contract. It doesn't say yes or no to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it doesn't, in the current contract, does not list CALAFCO and conference attendance and that kind of stuff, right? Specifically?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Jerry?
Actually, I just wanted to ask Uma, what is the industry standard with the other LAFCOs, or is this just something that we caught and now we're...
My understanding is he does split this among his LAFCOs that attend. I don't know what the industry standard is as far as what other attorneys do. I believe his stance is that that all of the LAFCOs that he serves benefits from his attendance, not just his attendance, but the presentations that he gives during the conferences. But he does spread that cost among them, which is why it's just a portion. And I don't know the industry standard.
Maybe we need to find
out. I know we've all dealt with lawyers, and we've clearly pushed a button here because it was something that hadn't been clarified And as we know, contracts generally, you want to clarify these types of items, and he does set a annual limit of $450 per year without client approval, which is nice. But I want to ask you, because dealing with a lawyer as a professional to a professional, you have a pretty good relationship with this lawyer that's representing us? Has he met your needs up to this point?
He has, yes, and he is. I think the benefit with Scott Brown is that he does have a lot of experience with LAFCOs. It doesn't take him long to research things and get back to me. He often has the answer, right away. Yeah, there are other attorneys that do LAFCO work that I'm sure would be similar, but when we discussed the potential for county counsel, that was one of the issues that was raised, was that the lack of LAFCO-specific knowledge.
Carrie?
Thank you. Have you talked to the other LAFCOs he represents? Any of their staff?
Not in relation to this. I could reach out and talk with them. I know they also have larger contracts with him. For example, Butte County has a $25,000 contract with him. We definitely have the smallest contract with Scott.
Then the second question, we went through the first year on a monthly basis, and the second year it was raised, second or third.
That was my question. How did it get raised?
Yeah, and
From
it was
5 to 6?
Yeah, it was raised from 5 to 6. It was because we evidently used a lot more time than he originally had contracted for.
Actually, it was a rate raise. His rates raised. It's the same amount of time, but an increase in rates, which he had not increased his rates by, I think, for 6 or 8 years or something like that.
I just couldn't remember why the raise.
So he didn't base his rate increase on the number of hours that we've actually accumulated over the previous 12 months?
No, it was an hourly rate adjustment.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if we do include these, and I agree with the rest of the commissioners that, why should we be paying for conference travel and that kind of thing, but if our hours do go up because of all this, is our rates going to go up? That's my biggest concern. So is he tabulating all these hours so that he can come back in a year and say, well, you've exceeded the what I wanted to do, therefore we're going to raise it to $800 or $1,000? That's the question that I have, because if we can keep it at $600, I don't know about you guys getting attorneys, but my attorneys don't cost $225 an hour. Attorneys can be $400 an hour, and if you got 2 hours a month, you're already over $600.
Yeah.
So those are the concerns I have, and having an attorney that does have LAFCO experience. But I don't agree with what Kevin said earlier about and John about the expenses. I don't think that's appropriate. But if he's not increasing our rates because of those hours, that's fine by me, as long as they're guaranteed $600
Well,
a month.
but when he's adding in the CALAFCO travel and registration, do you think that is overreaching a bit?
I do. I think it's overreaching, but as long as the rate doesn't go up.
Yeah, but this is a little add-on in addition to the rate where he's basically dinging us.
Oh, yeah.
It's over and above the 600.
It wasn't, it was the last month we paid him $824.
You were supposed to review that and watchdog it.
I did. Kevin?
I just, I'm wondering if you can provide us with the other contracts that Scott Brown has with the other LAFCOs.
I can ask for that.
I think you could simply check with the other LAFCO executive officers, and they would probably share that information, but I'm not too interested really in what the others would do. I think we need to do what we think is appropriate, and it looks like we allowed this previous overcharge to go through. So I think my position would be, you got us that time, but going forward, we will not pay for these charges. We will only pay conference and travel if it's specifically at the behest of Mendocino LAFCO.
I just wanted to see the other contracts, because in his amendment, he invokes these other contracts. He says there's 7 of them and they're split equally. How do we know that? We have no way of verifying that if he doesn't have the same agreement with the other
Public
LAFCOs.
trust and public funds.
It just seems to
Well,
me
but
that
it-
that should be something that's in the records somewhere, at least our records.
But again, I think we don't even need to go there because we're saying we're not going to pay it. So we don't need to know what the others are doing. It's only if we were going to agree to pay those charges, we would need to verify, are they accurate? That's my thought. Because I'm just not in favor of going there.
So we come back with a counter proposal that we will not pay for those kinds of expenses, but we'll continue with the contract.
And we might ask our executive officer to kind of have an informal conversation maybe and let him know the will of the commission. You know, I would do it a personal approach rather than firing off a letter, but I frankly, I am willing to say this is where we draw the line.
Okay. Gary? Antonio,
And you know, don't want to lose the man, for one. But on the other hand, that's why I'm talking about the use of public funds and public trust. Every official has that responsibility when using public funds. And you have to prove, you know, some oversight. That's what our auditor does. When I travel, if something doesn't add up, immediately it's thrown back at me. So prove this. Or, you know, you only are reimbursed so much if it happens to be a meal, or only so much for a hotel room. But that's in, you know, our travel policies, and there's someone that has oversight. And so, you know, this just really concerns me. If, you know, he wants us to do it, he has offered language, but it was never part of the original agreement that we had with him. And that's concerning if anyone decides to come after LAFCO and say it's a misuse of public funds.
Tony?
I think there's a creative solution here that because we send commissioners to these conferences, that if our contract would specify that he would meet with our members at the conference and allow a question and answer specific for Mendocino commissioners, then he would be providing a direct service, and I would be more inclined to agree to this kind of contract language.
Jerry?
I guess I was on the same line as Tony there, because I think when we went to the conference there, he made himself very available to me, but I think like what Carrie says, what is it going to look like to the public is, you know, we're bankrolling him attending these conferences, but he may be weighting his fee accordingly, but it's how it looks as opposed to what we want from it, so.
What if we change the language in the amendment to, says client further agrees to reimburse all out-of-pocket costs and expenses advanced by attorney on behalf of clients such as postage, photocopy, legal research, and then strike out travel and conference registration fees. Would that help?
Well, the way he's structured this, in the first paragraph, he said, I'm being paid through the contract for my time to do all these various things, including working with CALAFCO, the legislative committee of CALAFCO, CALAFCO University, and attending and presenting in the CALAFCO conferences. So we're getting the benefit of all that for our flat monthly fee. But then in the second part, he says, oh, so I'm not charging you for my time doing all these things, but I'm going to ding you for the travel and registration.
Well, that's why I'm saying take it out. Take travel and conference registration out. There's no reason why we shouldn't reimburse him on postage and photocopy.
Well, and I'm sure we do if he were to incur those charges on our behalf.
Yeah.
I could agree to that.
And filing is Form 700.
Have him share a room with one of our commissioners at the CALAFCO conference.
Oh, that'd go over big.
Are you volunteering?
Oh, no.
Well, so we would strike out travel,
Yes.
conference registration fees. Of course, we still have the all-inclusive, et cetera.
Do you want to take et cetera out too?
Yeah, I would take that out too. So it would say such as
Okay.
facsimile, postage, photocopying, legal research. And then there could be a new sentence in place of this current one. And so maybe it would be when travel and conference registration fees are incurred at the request of Mendocino County, or travel and other related expenses. I mean, I'm willing to pay if we say, come put on a training for us.
Sure.
Obviously would
Pay
pay.
for that.
So I don't want to write it here, but we would come up with something like that.
Would you say pre-approval? Carrie, then?
Yeah, pre-approval sounds good,
Right.
but
Yeah.
there may be new legislation, and it benefits us for him to do the research.
Well, we are keeping
Put on-
legal research in there.
Right. But putting on the projects and workshops
But
could
again,
benefit
the
us.
legal research should only be at when our EO calls him up and says, we need to know about this, or,
Yeah. Specific legal
Right.
research. Tony, you got a comment? Teresa?
Devil's advocate, wouldn't you want him to research something that would affect us that we don't know about yet? And then he could inform
Well, that-
us? I mean, isn't it his job to keep up on legislation or even bills that haven't been passed, so they're not formal legislation yet, that might potentially affect us? And so you would want him to be doing some sort of research to.
That's a good point, too. Tony, you have something to add? John?
well, if you're an attorney specializing in any field, it's your responsibility to stay up on that field. He's representing himself, the LAFCO expert, and obviously he follows all this stuff anyway. He's going to do that whether he has a contract with us or not. It just,
Well, my personal experience with attorneys, none of them, they always have to do research for you and charge you for it. They don't know it on top of their head. But we,
like-
but I don't want to pay him to research legislation, and frankly,
Yeah.
our staff and CALAFCO itself, does a good job, I would say, on that.
Well, he is a member of the legislative committee, CALAFCO Legislative Committee, and works with CALAFCO to put forward and support legislation that benefits LAFCO. So that is one of his contributions.
he did get a Lifetime Achievement Award by CALAFCO, too, 2012. Well, John, I agree with what you're saying. I agree with what Teresa's saying. If we can just come up with some language in this agreement, I don't know if we need to do it today, but it'd be helpful to get this taken care of. I think we all agree, at least I agree, that he has some assets that we really need. I'm really not looking forward to go out and find another attorney. And finding one at $225 an hour would be really difficult.
Well, frankly, we haven't had a lot of really controversial issues
We
coming
haven't been
through here.
sued yet, yeah.
Huh?
We haven't been sued yet.
And as a fallback, we actually have a number of competent attorneys within county council. If we had to, I think we have options.
Well, I think it's important that our executive officer have the, you know, the main say, because they're the one dealing with the county council in most cases. And like you say, she wants a decision as to how we proceed now, not have them research it and come back to her, which we've had in the past. But I think we're close, John, to getting some language here that might be acceptable.
Well, so are you basically suggesting staff, possibly with input from a couple of commissioners, draft language to send back to?
I would think that'd be a good recommendation. Teresa?
I have a recommendation that maybe the executive committee handle this and then bring it back to the full board once they've worked it out.
It is on our agenda for today, so
Good, good. Yeah.
we can talk about it and come up with some language, and but we'd have to bring it back to the board. We're delaying this a month. Is Scott going to be okay with that?
I'm not aware of any CALAFCO conferences, workshops that are scheduled for the coming months. I think the next one will be October
Okay.
for the conference.
So we'll have a month. You won't have a problem with us getting back within a month.
Are we holding back payment until that point? Or are we paying the
No, we're
600 a
Well, I
month?
mean, the 600 is all we owe now.
And I think.
So we are paying for it.
Unfortunately, I think Jerry authorized the previous $224 or whatever
I think
it
the
was.
commission approved the claims.
No, we approved you looking at it and verifying it was warranted, I think.
Huh.
Okay.
Anyway,
I had thought we had approved it until further research. What I
Water under the
remember.
bridge now.
Yeah,
I'm
until
willing to
we
s-
did further research.
well,
With the
we may
contract.
disagree, but I'm willing to say it's water under the bridge.
It's, take it out of my compensation.
Especially as treasurer.
I know I had a $90,000 check in my hand the other day. That was real nice. I could have went to Hawaii.
That's,
Well, the way our former bank account was, you probably
I could have, yeah. So we'll refer to the executive committee. Kevin and I and Carrie are meeting right after this meeting. We'll come up with something and bring it back. All right, let's have so much fun. We'll move on to item 7G. CALAFCO calls for legislative action. 3 support letters.
So this was sent to us last week by CALAFCO. There are three bills moving forward that CALAFCO is requesting support for, and those are in your packet. This is on page 98 of your agenda packet. It's AB 2238, which is a bill that will add a consideration for LAFCO reviews of proposals. So that would be for organizations, reorganizations, annexations, that LAFCO consider information contained in local hazard mitigation plans and in safety elements of general plans. So this has to do also with the high fire hazard mapping as well. So this would be adding a consideration factor for project considerations. AB 2268 has to do with restoring funding for inhabited annexations. I think this one is one that's a continuation of one that we discussed earlier and sent a letter of support for. This would be providing incentives to support future annexations of inhabited territories into cities. And then SB 929 is a bill that would require independent special districts to have a website by January of 2020. There is a consideration in there, an exemption standard for districts that can prove a hardship. I think they would have to do an annual resolution every year and submit that, saying that the hardship is still in place. So those letters are in your agenda packet for consideration.
Okay, any questions on the 3 letters? Gary, then Jerry, then John.
Go ahead, Jerry.
I was just saying, on 929, that'd be like our cemetery districts, they like for hardship, this seems like the environment.
Right, I think that the hardships could include financial hardships or staffing hardships.
Yeah, and I was just about to say the same thing, but this an annual resolution concerns me because we have some little districts that don't have full boards, so they don't have you can't come up with appointments. So how can they take action on a yearly basis when they don't have a full board? You know, that's the only thing I find in McGuire's bill. Maybe I need to call him and tell him that. But it would be an annual resolution that they would have to go through.
So what happens if they don't file an annual resolution?
So who do they file it with, themselves?
Yeah.
Teresa?
That was my concern as well. And I was wondering if if you knew of a competing bill, because sometimes there's competing bills with a little different language.
I don't think
I
there
didn't
is.
research it though.
Yeah, I don't think there is,
And then-
but that point should be made that we have a concern with an annual resolution as tiny as some of these districts are, and the
Exactly.
cemetery districts are the perfect example.
And then once you make this a law, if they aren't able to do that, have you opened them up to litigation?
Right, so and probably so, if it becomes law, and it's being promoted because the public wants to see websites, so they don't necessarily have to attend meetings, but they want to see the proposed agenda for an upcoming meeting or the final agenda, information contained. But it's like IWPC now has a website, and it's going to come at a cost, which may mean that each one of the member agencies may have to pay a little bit more money each year, because once you have a website, you've got to maintain that, constantly putting every month, agenda, approved minutes, and going forward. And it does take maintenance at an extra cost. So it may be a hardship. We look at our fire districts right now, or community service districts, some of our water districts that really are, just squeak by with volunteers. And it could be more of a hardship than just for the cemetery districts in maintaining a website.
But some of those districts you talk about, the water districts, fire districts, they could fill out an exemption every year.
That's true.
I could see where the cemetery districts would have a problem.
But it would mean you need to look at the language under 929 to really determine what that means.
Right.
And there is also other legislation which states that if you do have a website, you are required to do A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So once you have that website, then you have additional requirements as a special district.
Well,
So
it's
and
also-
there's a monthly cost to that as well.
Tony?
Yeah, this requirement is shopped out. There are companies that charge $100 a month to maintain a legal website for an entity. So we know what the cost is, and you can look at the budgets of some of our districts and see whether that's reasonable or not. I wonder if they might amend the bill to allow CALAFCO to maintain on our website a link to our MSRs for those districts who are unable to so maintain a website of their own because of the cost requirement. I mean, that would, I think, be reasonable. Why do we do MSRs that contain all that level of information? At least it might seem reasonable that would satisfy the legislature that there's adequate information over even these smallest districts. That's just my opinion.
So maybe we need to meet with, same office, just right across the hall, same building, I should say, right across the hall. Meet with Taylor and express these concerns previous to sending this letter in support, and getting the answers to them and expressing our concerns, because maybe the senator hasn't heard that and would be willing to amend. And I don't know how far along this is in the process, but I think it's worthy to bring up these concerns.
John?
Well, to that point, shouldn't we answer those questions before we write this glowing letter of support?
Well, this is what I said. Let's don't send the
Yeah.
letter on that particular bill.
And this bill does directly impact our districts, but I'm questioning kind of as a separate issue here, how much staff time do we want reviewing these items rather than, you know, we're always tossing out additional things. I think we've been a little better lately, but we went through a period almost every meeting we were adding new tasks to staff that we wanted them to take on. And today we have said, gee, maybe do a little additional outreach on the area of interest issue. So some of these things, like these first two here, they're going to go the way they're going to go, whether we send a letter or do the research or not. So I would ask us to consider, maybe we ask our staff to be more selective in the issues they're reviewing, that when they have certainly a direct potential negative impact to some of our districts, then that's when we would weigh in.
Carrie?
Yeah, and again, I bring up CALAFCO and attending their meetings, being on their legislative review committee, their executive committee, or their board of directors. You know, these are that they've gone through and approved. So, you know, maybe we erred by not being at the table, their tables, to bring up these concerns. It's just, it struck me, and I've seen this through McGuire's public emails and what have you, but never had focused on it to think how that might impact our districts. I just think they're good questions, and I just like to hold this back just long enough. And I think we directed staff to write letters in support of CALAFCO's legislative platform and promotion of their legislation. I think that was a direct discussion we had here among the board members. So I don't know. It just
Well, I know is over the years, we've been trying to promote more websites for these districts and cities and
Yes.
county. The real question is, how do we deal with the exemption, so it's not a problem
That
for these
was
smaller
my
ones?
point.
So do we do an exemption every 5 years? I mean, I know annually could be a little difficult, but we really want to see more websites, more financial information.
Well, the
those
public
kinds of
does
things. I
as
think
well.
overall, the website thing is a good thing. It's just, how do we deal with the smaller districts and putting undue burden on them? Yes, Uma.
Just a general comment, and staff, we don't spend a lot of time researching these bills that come through. We get these, that's kind of CALAFCO's responsibility, is how we've been working it. And I know that I've heard that this is fairly new to this commission, is requesting these letters of support and bringing these forward. My impression with it was that there was interest in the legislative actions that were going on that were affecting LAFCO, which is why they've been coming forward. There's also been an increased actions or activities on CALAFCO's part to be more involved in the legislative actions and to promote LAFCO's, and also make sure that LAFCO is not overridden in a lot of the bills that happen. So that's why there's more activity on this, the legislative items, and why they've requested letters of support. I think it is important that LAFCO's do provide letters of support and speak up in the future. But if the commission would like to see fewer of these, then we can we can do that as well, so.
Tony?
I think this shows that we need these because we're okay with 2, but we had some comments on 1. And we didn't have these discussions before, and yet they do potentially have impacts locally. So I'm still in favor of the process as it's fleshing out.
I do want to add that CALAFCO makes it very easy for us. They send us the templates and say, you can use these, put them on your letterhead, revise them as you see fit. And so it makes for a very streamlined, easy, not time-consuming process for us.
Jerry?
I kind of agree with Tony, that the city were wrestling with this because we also didn't want to put a lot of burden on staff also. Would agree with Tony. It does. We had a good discussion here regarding, and I guess in reference to our small districts that we're always concerned about.
So, yeah, Beth?
I had a question for the supervisors. If a small district like the cemetery district does not have a quorum, so their board does not meet, how does any action go forward? Does it then come to the Board of Supervisors? It doesn't. There's no.
I don't think there's any mechanism until they have a quorum.
Because I think that would be a fail-safe that the Board of Supervisors could present a resolution on behalf of the district annually. No,
I don't think so.
But you don't have people that will step up to take on volunteers.
to be on the board.
We hear about the fire departments. Well, we have so many districts that, sometimes that just happens. And I think there are very few that we have a problem with the quorum. But on the other hand, you've got to find the volunteers to step up. And a lot of times people don't want to step up because of the amount of work,
Responsibility and work.
that holding a seat takes.
My second comment was regarding the meeting with the senator's staff. Perhaps if Commissioner McCowan's suggestion was heard, not to have staff do it, but a commissioner or 2 might want to step forward and have that meeting on behalf of LAFCO instead of the staff.
Teresa?
I was going to suggest that just representing a special district, I would go into the senator's office and asking Tony to do the same, or anyone else. So.
Okay, so this is a template. We can change it or add to it, delete, whatever we want. Is there anything here today that we could change the letter to with the exemption? I think we all agree that websites are good. Is there a way we could change the language in the letter that would support helping the smaller districts like cemetery districts, John?
Well, in the time we've been discussing this, we could have pulled up the bill and seen exactly what the language is. But if we wanted to move forward, staff has certainly heard the discussion and understands the concern. We could approve, subject to staff reviewing the bill language and adding comments as appropriate. If in staff's judgment the exemption section is too onerous, understanding the situations of some of our smaller districts, then staff could put in language advocating for a little more leniency there.
Okay.
I mean, I certainly would trust staff to make appropriate comments.
And there's really nothing in the letter that you would change, but it's just the one concerned about.
Exemption.
Right,
Yeah.
because the letter is just generic support.
Right.
So if we still have a concern based on the discussion, staff could add in.
And it may be a concern that the senator and/or his staff has never had raised. So it's a good thing to at least ask that, and they may have, a really good reason.
So you're suggesting that they read through the letter and then bring it to me for signature?
Well, they review the legislation, and if based on our discussion, some amended language is appropriate for the letter, then they would draft language, and then, I would say for the approval of the chair.
Sure. That's fine.
Okay.
Right.
Are the other two approved, or?
Yeah, I think John said it well. It's going to go forward with regardless of our support letter or not. But I don't think there's any problems with the first two.
Do you need a motion? I'll move approval of the 3 letters, given the conversation. The letter on SB 929 might be modified by staff before sending.
I'll second.
Any more comments on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Hearing none, so approved. All right, we'll move on to item 8A, work plan, current and future proposals. Looks like no changes specifically from the last couple of months. John?
Well, oh, excuse me.
Oh, sorry. There was one project that was added to the potential future projects.
Oh, the annexation of industrial property?
Yeah, I had a couple of conversations with the developer and city of Willits staff regarding a potential annexation of industrial property into the city of Willits last year. And then a couple of weeks ago, I also received a call from a consultant who is now working with that developer and requested additional information and how to move that forward. So I did add that to the list. So that's new. And that I think that's the only new thing.
Okay, John, you have a comment?
Well, I think we could refine this list a bit. So we say future projects, and then we have potential project proposals. Well, the Anderson Valley CSD, that's a proposal. There's been a lot of effort expended on that. The proposed consolidation, that's obviously a proposal. There's a lot of effort going forward there. The proposed Brook Trails Boulevard District is a concept.
Yep.
There's no project. There's no current proposal. And then the annexation, that certainly sounds like a potential future project, but it isn't one now. So, you know.
So you're asking to maybe have proposed projects and then future projects?
Well, yeah, I would differentiate certainly between the first 2 on this list and then the last 2.
That's
I'm not
future.
sure they're even there until someone walks in the door and hands us something.
Possible projects?
Areas of interest?
There is a code section actually that talks about the executive officer informing the commission about potential projects in the future, which is where this list came from. We could mention them, and we don't have to carry them forward with each staff report, or we could keep those on the list that we actually have applications that we are at least have been on the books. There are different ways I think we can present that, but that's where that initially came from.
And I could see that being part of a report, but I don't know that a concept being mentioned should then live on the report for the future.
We just want to know that we're busy. Carrie?
And I think the key word that you used, Uma, is potential instead of proposed. So,
But that's
and
why
that
we-
helps, and that helps inform us of knowledge of something going forward. And then when we talk about the proposed consolidation of 4 water districts in Ukiah Valley area, they have a public meeting coming up, just so everyone knows. I don't have the paperwork with me, but it is coming up, so.
Okay,
Well,
John.
how
For the
about we
public.
proposed projects,
Okay,
and that'd be the first 2 here, and then we have
potential.
potential projects.
That works for me.
Just adds one more heading.
Proposed and potential.
Well, because
The
otherwise
difference
someone's going to,
between the
well, can I get the
potentially
staff report
proposed?
on the Boulevard?
Yeah, that's
District?
true.
Anyway.
Jerry, what's the property that For the industrial property in
I
Willis.
think it's off of
Lenore?
Blosser, south of Blosser, I think.
Oh, okay.
Or not southwest of Blosser, I think, out there, isn't it?
It's on the east side of 101, or the
Highway 20?
what used to be 101. Yeah, it's between the city limits and the new overpass, I believe.
Oh, is that where it's at?
I believe
okay.
so.
Oh, okay.
Because I thought the one where they were interested in was off of Cropley out there somewhere, coming in there.
I haven't seen a map, so you're probably correct, yeah.
All right. Thank you, John, for those comments. We'll make the changes. Any other comments on that? Looks like we're ready for July, August. We're in the Ukiah Valley Fire Department.
Correct. We are working with the Ukiah Valley Fire Department, or Fire Protection District, and we hope to have something workshop for next meeting, but it may run into August depending on the information we can get. We've also started the Fort Bragg Rural Fire Protection District, and Brick Trails is still in progress. We will have the Mutual Water Company profiles in draft form for you at the July meeting.
Good.
Yeah, we've been working with that, and the admin drafts are being reviewed by the water companies now.
Jerry?
Tony?
I think it's only been recently we've discovered that county service areas are under LAFCO review, or should be so reviewed by LAFCOs. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And I see that you have it on your agenda to discuss your county service area, so I just wanted to mention it now that apparently it's on the MSR list, and we didn't quite understand that, so.
Okay, good. All right, we'll move on to...
I did have one question.
Yeah, sure.
So we see Ukiah Valley Fire Protection District in progress, and of course there's been a functional merger with City Fire, and so that'll include all of the city and district operations, presumably.
That's why it's taking a little longer. We're coordinating with both the city and the district to get a clear understanding of that functional consolidation.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think they've got a joint powers agreement.
Mhm.
And so.
And
Yes,
they
there's
used to.
I can speak to that.
Yeah, back to
Till
the
they
future.
dissolved, and now they're back.
It is a
Back
joint
together.
powers agreement. The fire district employees have all been transferred to the city. They're now city employees. So I think there's some, there's a few things hanging in terms of district services that is probably difficult for LAFCO to pull together on the MSR, but that's a major change that needs to be addressed.
It's a good thing. All right, move on to 8B, correspondence.
We had no correspondence to note.
Okay, 8C, executive officers report.
I have a couple of items. Just want to let everyone know that the conference registration in hotels is open now. The conference is October 3rd through 5th at Tenaya Lodge in Yosemite. We have budgeted for about 4 commissioners to go. So the sooner that you could let us know or have that discussion about who would like to go, the better. I think I'm going to go ahead and reserve some rooms because they are going to go very fast. But just keep me posted, please, on who would like to go.
What are the odds?
I'd like to go, but I know some people haven't gone, so I'd be.
I think you should.
Yeah, you should. You went to the last one, but you want to go to, Tony?
Here's 2.
That's a maybe. I have to check calendars.
I thought I was going to go last year, but
Yeah, sunny San Diego. You missed out.
October 3rd to 5th.
I'll go, but if there's somebody before us, because I go all the time, if somebody else wants to go, I'll go. But
I can't. I've got a son getting married in Southern California.
Oh, good.
Sunny,
Oh, my goodness.
Sunny San Diego
Oh.
at that period of time.
Dan, you interested in going?
I'm a short timer.
You're a short
I'll
time.
be a really short time.
You're a lame duck.
So then you're going to become a public member of the commission, huh?
Oh, perhaps.
Yeah, there you
See?
go.
I'll have to consider that.
Phone me out. Teresa, you interested?
Considering. Check the calendar. And then also, because my term is up December, so to consider whether I want to re-up or not, so.
Okay. Kevin, you went last year as well. Are you interested in going?
It just depends. I'd rather give that opportunity to somebody who didn't go last year.
I'm willing to give mine to John.
So
Okay.
tentatively.
Okay, we've got 2 for sure, but I
Okay.
think there'll be 4. So we want to
Okay.
reserve rooms for 4.
Okay. The other thing that we are working on is the county did reach out to us about the RDA Oversight Board consolidation, and that happened before the agenda packet. After the agenda packet was ready to go. So didn't include an item in the packet this time, but we are working with the Auditor Controller's Office and the CEO's office to do the special district members selection process. It is going to, the costs were not anticipated in the budget, so I wanted to give the commission a heads up about that. I did speak to Chair Ward about it before agreeing to go forward with it. CALAFCO, a lot of LAFCOs have brought this issue up. You know, our budgets were not, did not have this in mind when this came down through the legislature. CALAFCO suggested that the costs may be reimbursed through that one-time grant opportunity if that passes. Again, that has to pass first for that to happen. I am going to track my time separately so we can know how much time is spent on this process. If the commission would like, I can do a full report on it at the next commission meeting and the process.
I think it would be important to do that. It's pretty complicated, but the one concern is if we don't have an election and have a person available, then the governor will pick that person by July 1st or July 15th.
It's July 15th. I did let the CEO's office know that they should probably coordinate with the governor's office because our process will not be done in that time frame. It will take us a minimum of 2 months. There's specific time requirements. You have to send out the nominations and give 30 days for responses, and then you have to, if there's more than one person nominated, we have to do an election process, send out ballots. So it's a 2 to 3, maybe even 4 month process. I have let the CEO's office know that. They said they would coordinate with the governor's office and asked us to move forward with it.
Okay, good. Carry it down. All right, we'll get a report then next month. All right, we'll move on to committee reports. The Policy and Procedure Committee met on May 21st. I think we heard most of it.
I think you heard most of it too. I believe we're going to have another meeting this month. Either the 11th or the 18th was discussed. So if there's anything that we need to take up, let us know.
Well, there was on your agenda some compensation for the commissioners.
Yes, I believe we're discussing mileage reimbursement for city members.
Okay. Is that going to be discussed again?
I believe.
Yeah,
Uma?
in reviewing it with legal counsel, he had some questions and considerations for the committee to look at. And it also would be an impact to our budget that was not anticipated, so they have to consider that as well.
So city reps aren't getting mileage right now? That's not-
Currently, no. Just special district and public members.
Okay. All right. Executive committee is scheduled to meet after today's meeting. There was no meeting prior. We'll move on to AD commissioner reports, comments, or questions. Carrie.
Thank you. Uma asked me about providing information about possible grant funding because at the last meeting we were talking about the size of pipe for the city of Point Arena, and I forgot packet. I made one up.
Oh, nice.
But Usually they can find it under the USDA Rural Development, grant opportunities, and if you're a water district, a sewer district, we have the IRWIMP funding. Not much left, but there is a bill, a proposed bill, it's on the ballot, that would put some more money into the IRWIMP, and the 7-county coalition, of which Mendocino belongs to, it's called the North Coast Resource Partnership. And that funding is available. They have another pocket of funding that will be available, and that comes up in the fall, where they'll make the announcement, do a workshop on submitting grants and what areas. It's not for studies, it's for actual projects. So that is something that the 7 counties work on with this partnership.
Thank you.
Any other commissioner reports? Okay, we'll move on to 8F, CALAFCO Business and Legislative Report.
So there's some information in your packet starting on page 105. It is the CALAFCO Board of Directors nomination.
I want to nominate Commissioner McCowan.
What is it if?
I want to submit his name.
If nominated, I shall not run. If elected, I shall not serve.
It's also, they've sent a recruitment for board members for the Northern Region. They're looking for city and public members. Also, for information, there's a CalLAFCO video guide that talks about LAFCOs and was put together. They've sent that out, and I will send it out to the commissioners, but one of their suggestions was that it could be placed on the website as just more of a get the word out there. This is who LAFCO is, this is what they do. So I'll send that out, and then maybe some feedback about whether you would like it on the on our website. And that's it for our report. That's it.
How about the outstanding LAFCO clerk? Nominate that.
What? No, wait, what?
We know we have the best team.
Yep. Okay, anything else on the LAFCO, in the CalLAFCO? All right, we will adjourn at 10:46.
Bam.
Scott, thank you. We're done with the
Break
mics.
before we
Yeah, a little break before we.
Where